So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone in attendance here today. We've had a really wonderful response to this event, and quite a few people that have actually booked contacted us to say that they were sorry they cannot attend the live session, but as we are recording this, they will be able to view this at a later date, as you will be. For those of you here today and those that did book, it really is a testament to your commitment to this world to do some good. And I assure you, the team at UNHCR appreciate your donation, which was in the ticket price. Um, I think what you're going to hear today is certainly for me a very inspiring story. Um, this is not about geopolitics or discussions about the most, horrific circumstances playing out in Ukraine, but rather a positive and inspirational story of resolve, commitment, dedication of the people in Ukraine. And in this case, we're focusing on the software development sector. In short, this came about because in our business we have many relationships within the innovation space, and of course software development is one of those elements. A couple of years ago, Michael Sapenko reached out to us, and we were so impressed with his positioning of SoftPositive, his company, their values, their skills within their team, and very much their integrity came across strongly. Since then, we've built a relationship that led us to set up this event. In fact, you'll also be hearing from one of Michael's clients here in Australia, a group called Resonate Consulting, where the managing director, Deb James, will be saying a few words about their experience, particularly post 24th of February. I must say, though, that the Resonate team have been really awesome, and the company actually offered to pay the tickets for all their staff to be here. So that was, quite a few of them online here with us today. So congratulations to all of you for the support. It was a few weeks ago that in a conversation with Michael where I asked him, how he was holding up in business, when he answered in a pretty matter-of-fact sort of way that, well, Trevor, we're still developing and delivering projects. In fact, I just employed 2 new programmers last week. I was pretty stunned by his response, but it left me inspired by Michael's attitude that in such devastating circumstances, they were far from being consumed about what was going on around them, but in fact, getting on with life, being very aware of what's going on around. But yeah, they really wanted to just get in and do what they do to contribute to the efforts. And Michael made the point of saying just how important it is for the West to continue to trade with Ukraine, and that it helped his team to keep earning money, because that's really important, but also for their own mental health, to feel valued and not consumed by their own situation. It was at this point that we decided that we must do something to highlight just how resolute and committed the Ukrainian people are. So I'm looking forward to introducing you to Michael and then Deb James from Resonate Consulting. We'll also be hearing from Jordan Miller, Managing Director from CheckRight, very successful platform with a paperless system to manage all your inspections and assets and processes and so on. And Jordan has an internal software development team, but many of his people are actually based in Ukraine, of the developers. And often, it's about managing their platform while over here in Australia that Jordan and his team here are actually asleep. So he'll share some of his thoughts on the skills and the commitment of the Ukrainian team members. As a special guest here today is Trudy Mitchell, Deputy National Director of Australia for UNHCR. I think you'll be very interested in hearing about the specific programs that UNHCR are conducting in Poland and Moldova to assist the Ukrainian refugees. As we all know, many of them are children and women. But now I would really like to introduce you to Volodymyr Shelgivsky, Deputy Head of the mission from the Embassy of Ukraine here in Australia. Unfortunately, the Ambassador, Mr. Vasyl Mirshenko, flew out to Ukraine literally yesterday on a very important mission, and he does send his apologies as he was very keen to be here in person today. But Volodymyr, welcome to this event. We would very much welcome a few words from you, sir.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to express appreciation to all of you for your interest and for your willingness to consider something for my country, because what happened is, of course, probably one of the biggest geopolitical shocks for the pretty much recent decades. But we are leaving aside the political side and security side of this event, and I will just concentrate on the economic investment, trade potential of Ukraine, because yes, the war impact on Ukraine is tremendous, and well, we expect that up to 35% of GDP lost we will face at the end of this year. There are approximately 5 million people who left territory of Ukraine as of now. But actually, if you consider situation, if you check the situation on the western borders right now, it's more people who are coming back than who are leaving the country. And we have already around 1 million people who came back. In terms of, well, of course, the load of and impact the Poland suffers, and well, Poland actually provides the biggest support and took the biggest share of this load in terms of the displaced quantity of displaced persons and assistance, because right now Poland serves a gateway to Ukraine. Since we have no fly zone almost over Ukraine, in terms of that we do not have possibility to deliver any goods and services and through the regular flights, so it's pretty much through Poland. Probably many of you know about quite desperate situation on the global food market, because Ukraine is one of the biggest top 5 producer in terms of grain, sunflower oil, corn, and naval blockade of the Black Sea. Besides the significant negative economic impact on Ukraine, actually also has tremendous consequences for the food security in most vulnerable areas of the world, in Northern Africa and Middle East and some Asian countries as well. We do hope that we will find alternative ways to deliver the agricultural production from Ukraine. But all military conflicts, all wars eventually end, and we would like to. I would like to sound positive that we can already discuss what happens in the next stage when the situation will be normalized, and we are confident that we will prevail and we will preserve our independence and as a free country. And there are a lot to offer from Ukraine in terms of trade, investments, and economic opportunities. And IT was actually one of the most dynamically developed sectors of Ukrainian economy due to a number of factors. Quite developed scientific and educational network in Ukraine that provided a significant number of IT experts, IT specialists. As we as we were told last year, Ukraine is not the cheapest IT destination, but in terms of price, cost benefit analysis, Ukrainian companies were the most effective or were among the most effective comparing to many other IT powerhouses around the world. So there were very significant presence of international IT business in Ukraine, and of course, significant part of IT market in Ukraine was so-called outsourcing. But during the recent years, we saw the arrival of major technological companies like Samsung with their research and development centers established in Ukraine. Well, another factor was quite liberal legislation and taxation regime. Of course, there were kind of challenges as well, but still, comparing to other parts of the world, there were quite good opportunities. After the war started, of course, it had impact on the IT as on many other sectors of the economy, but taking into account the very kind of the substance of this industry, it was easy to kind of to shift operations to the western part of the country, where majority of population from eastern part of Ukraine moved to western part, and before the war, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa were among the biggest IT hubs in Ukraine. So right now, many IT companies have their offices in relocated in western part of Ukraine. There is a Well, there is a still danger. Of course, there is no such term as a safe place in Ukraine. There are still missiles attacks, but we are quite confident in the um, abilities and power of our military, armed forces, and territorial defense forces. So there is a still full-fledged war, but the IT business slowly adjusting to the new realities, and significant amount of companies still carry on their operations, and taking into account that the biggest foreign policy priority for Ukraine remains unchanged. It's European integration, EU joining of the European Union. Significant work in terms of alignment of legislation continues. So in terms of legislation and taxation, I can predict that in years to come, it will look more and more similar to what European Union can offer or have. But of course, in order to attract attention, comparing to our neighbors, we have to adapt. We have to create more favorable conditions in terms of taxation, in terms of infrastructure. Though it will require significant investments from the government, and right now level of distractions is for the regular infrastructure is just shocking. It will require significant amount of time to rebuild, to reconstruct it. But we are confident in our future, because we feel very significant and unwavering support of our international partners, including Australia. So we hope that international companies will take part into in reconstruction projects, in activities around the country when the war ends. And we also hope that the Ukrainian displaced persons, 90% of them are women and children, that they will come back to our country, because we need them in order to rebuild our homeland. So at this point, probably I will stop. I will be happy to answer questions now or later, in case you have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Volodymyr. I think all of us can be inspired by your positive outlook. It's also very important for us here in Australia to be learning about what the situation is on the ground and how we can help. So that is absolutely wonderful. And thank you in what is such a busy time for you, no doubt, to be here and give us the time to address the audience here. Thank you very much, Volodymyr.
Thank you.
Certainly, if you are able to stay around or whatever, then you know, we would sort of value some questions if we can get a little bit of time later on. But I think, yes, what it does teach us is that we can appreciate that it's not only important to do our part by considering the economic trade opportunities, but also, you know, the effort that's gone in by Ukraine in building their software development industry. As I opened the event, I spoke of Michael Sapenko. And so now, Michael, I'd really like to bring you into the discussion. It's great to see you always. but firstly, welcome. I know it's very early in the morning for you, particularly as an IT person. I know you had to get out of bed and set the alarm for what is it, about 8:30 or 8:45 your time now. But I was wondering if you could maybe share with the audience what life was like in Kiev and Ukraine generally up until the 24th of February, particularly in regards to your business, SoftPositive, and the business, that you were doing.
Thank you, Trevor. First of all, thank you for arranging this event for all of us. I would like to introduce briefly myself. My name is Michael Tsapenka, and I'm founder and CEO at SoftPositive. We are in business since 2014, and we provide software development services to companies in Australia, Europe, United States, particularly through outstaffing and outsourcing services. And we kept doing this before the war, and we were living our normal lives, planning our new projects and new opportunities, particularly with Australia. And yeah, we had a lot of plans, and me and my wife and my little daughter, we lived in Kiev, almost in the center of the city, with our peaceful lives and doing business with our clients, just like millions of regular people in Ukraine.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine for us, here, Michael, and I imagine, pre the invasion, very difficult for you to comprehend. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your team, because one of the things that we want to learn about Ukraine and Ukraine software development are the type of skills, the experience, maybe even like the type of projects that SoftPositive loves doing.
Yeah, we specialize at really complex projects which require high level of expertise in particular technological and business domains. We do not create simple websites where people just want to attract, or landing pages where people just want to attract some attention to their companies. We usually develop complex business solutions to automate some business processes, replace manual work, improve some inefficiencies in existing business systems. That's what we do, and particularly with Resonate Consultants company, which is based in Australia, we are working on a very complex project, or even multiple projects, which allow businesses in Australia to minimize impact on environment by reducing the amount of noise and vibration in the environment. And we develop complex software to assess the impact, to perform real-time recording of the noise in the environment, and then producing some reports and results which required due to local legislation in Australia. We also work with multinational company X-Rite, which is based in Switzerland, but they also have offices in United States, and we develop complex software for color management industry, where businesses require to measure the color on some surface and then create paint, for example, or calibrate monitors, or use hardware devices to measure color, etc., etc. This also requires quite a lot of skills and understanding of, for example, mathematics or complex algorithms. And I think such type of skills really makes Ukrainian developers one of the best on the market. Like Volodymyr said, I think particularly due to historical tendency of Ukrainian developers to dig deep into mathematics, algorithms, programming patterns, etc. This builds up the core of educational background of Ukrainian developers. And I think another thing which distinguishes Ukrainian developers is that they are often perfectionists and they want to build the perfect architecture, the perfect program, perfect product, so that sometimes I have to stop them and say, okay, guys, yeah, let's find some balance between building something really great and awesome, but we have to keep in mind the budget, timeline, etc., etc. So yeah, this is the reality.
Oh, that's great. It's a good description of certainly some experiences that we're aware of. Now we know you're doing projects in Australia and other Western countries. How challenging has it been to, I guess, keep doing your work and your team, with what the country is experiencing now? What have been, I guess, some of the biggest challenges from a business and also people management perspective?
Yeah, I think the most challenging period is already in the past for us, and we see the future as bright for Ukraine. And
We just lost your sound. We'll just give Michael a moment we've just lost your sound there, Michael.
yeah,
Now you're
sorry.
back again. That's all right.
Yeah.
You're back. You were saying?
Yeah, I said that the most challenging part is already in the past, and I think most of us experienced emotional stress, which during the first week, and many people were stressed and didn't know what to do next, how to react to this situation. And some people decided to stay where they live, for example, in Kiev. And like Volodymyr said, many of them had to relocate because they didn't feel safe. But frankly speaking, we got to work just within 3 or 4 days. So by the 1st of March, all of our team members were already
Relocated.
back to work and keep working on their tasks. So I want to thank all our clients and customers who supported us during this period of time, because it was really important for us to feel that support and understand that there are people in other countries who help us to cope with this situation. So now, and during the last 2 months, we operate as usual, and we keep working on our projects and doing our tasks as usual.
Wonderful to hear. I guess one of the other things is that to get an understanding of, what actually makes Ukrainian developers special about how they go about their job. I know you spoke about, just briefly before, but is there an attitudinal thing or the background of the education system? Yeah, Ukrainians have a very good reputation. So how would you describe, I guess what it is about them that they're so good at doing software development.
Yeah, I think Vladimir already mentioned that Ukraine is probably not the cheapest destination to look for developers, but I really think, and I hear this from my clients and other contacts in Europe, United States, Australia, that Ukrainian developers are one of the best on the market. And I think this is thanks to our mentality, which is probably based on the same values as European Union, United States, and Australia. We share the same way of thinking. And another thing is, like I said already, is technological background of our developers. Many of us consider programming not just the way to make money. This is our dedication. We love coding, we love programming, and this makes us happy. And I particularly think that at SoftPositive, we are software development addicts, and we see no life without programming. This is our way to express ourselves. And I think it's important for people to love their job, and that makes the results much better than average.
Yeah, I mean that's really well said. I think all of us in whatever career that we have, when you actually love, what you do, it does make you a better person at doing what you do. So I think that's a great one, Michael. Just for our audience here, how can Australian companies and those that are watching this in other Western countries, we actually do have bookings from people overseas. How can they help you continue operating and paying, your staff wages?
Yeah, Volodymyr already mentioned that IT business in Ukraine is growing year after year, and now it's one of the key pillars of export economy in Ukraine, and one of the key pillars for regular people, because like was mentioned before, big part of business in Ukraine is now not fully operational or displaced or even closed, and IT industry is one of those which is affected the least, because we were well prepared for this, particularly due to COVID. So we have to thank it.
Yeah.
At this point, we were well prepared and distributed. Many companies do not have physical office, for example. They work remotely completely, and we have all infrastructure in cloud, and we have really great internet in coverage in Ukraine. So we were well prepared for this situation, and we easily regrouped in safer places to keep working. And now it's important to keep economic power of Ukraine to sustain the stress and win this war. And IT business is one of the sources of revenue and income for families and for the country in general in Ukraine. That's why it's important not only to keep working with existing customers and clients for us, but even bring more in Ukraine to keep IT industry growing and replacing some industries which cannot operate normally now, particularly like agriculture,
Yes.
because the war affected them probably the most. That's why I think it is important, and I want one of the reasons I supported the idea of this event is to explain people abroad that there are still a lot of places in Ukraine which are pretty safe to keep working. It's not like war is everywhere. And we want to work. We want to keep working. We want to, I won't even say to live our normal lives to the possible extent, even during the war.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can recall you saying to me when we were discussing this that yes, while the charity element is very important for the refugees, you said to me, we don't need charity. We can work, we can trade, we can deliver projects, and we can earn our own money that way. So I think that's very commendable to you. Pretty much sums up a lot of the attitude that we're all learning about your country. I guess, you know, from a personal perspective, your team members and so on, what do you think the support means to your staff, your families, and your country?
Yeah, we discussed this before. There are still people in Ukraine which need charity, like children, people who had to leave their homes, and they need protection and support. But on the other hand, there are still a lot of people like me and others who can work, who can deliver. And yes, we don't need charity. We can give you the services, we can give you the products which you can buy from us, and in this way to support us. So it's not a charity, it's just doing business, and I think it's beneficial for all of us. Regarding families, yeah, we have different situations in our company. Some people had to relocate to western parts, like Slava, our UI designer. He had to move out, and some other people stayed in Kiev and kept working. Only one of our guys decided to join armed forces of Ukraine, and he is now serving in army. And both our clients and our company and our colleagues supported all of these people who suffered the most by providing financial support, by providing mental support. And I think I know that they appreciate it a lot, and it's important for us to feel that we are not alone. There are people around the globe who support us in this battle.
Yeah, well said. Michael, thank you very much for your time. Please hang around with us. I think, you know, it's been very helpful for us as Australians and others that will watch this later on to understand that doing business with Ukraine, firstly, can still happen, and then will translate into, you know, some engagements. Jasmine's been putting into the chat some links directly to the SoftPositive website where you can connect with Michael. But we've also put in a link to the IT Association of Ukraine, of which Vasil, the ambassador, had passed on to us. Michael has a team and a growing team, but you know, hopefully we're able to create so much that we'll keep his team very busy, and so the IT Association is another way that you can connect to other software development houses. So I think, thank you very much, Michael. I'll now move on to Deb James, who's the Managing Director from Resonate, who is a client of Michael's. And when I reached out to Deb, she just had no hesitation at all in joining the event. And Deb, we've just heard from Michael, who you engaged with some time ago to help you with the project. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about the project, what you needed done, and why did you actually choose to work with SoftPositive in Ukraine?
Yeah, thank you, Trevor, and thank you for having me. I'm really honoured to be here and speaking on behalf of Resonate. So Resonate have a few innovation projects, and one that we wanted to get off the ground about 18 months ago was a construction noise prediction app for our construction clients. Mm-hmm. And before we engaged SoftPositive, we were using Australian developers who we were sharing with a sister company, and there came a point in their time where they needed to have their developers focused 100% on their projects, and so we were forced to look elsewhere, which turned out to be quite a blessing. And because I didn't really have much experience in this space and really any contacts in this space, I contacted you, Trevor.
Yes.
I did have you as a contact, I guess.
Yeah.
And you kindly introduced us to maybe 3 or 4 different companies in Australia and overseas, as you know.
Yes.
So we caught up with each of them over Teams. I think it was COVID at the time, and some of them were overseas. Mm-hmm. And we immediately felt a really good connection with Michael. He listened to our problem. He asked really intelligent questions, and he responded with an itemised list breaking down our project and tasks, and the hours and the costs that needed to happen to deliver this project. And obviously, being engineers, that really appealed to us. Mm-hmm. And he really showed genuine interest in our project. Yeah. And that really, that did seem different from the other. I think we probably caught up with Michael last. And mm-hmm. so that really stood out to us because it seemed different from all the other interactions that we had. And I'm sure they were excellent and could have delivered what SoftPositive did, but they were more interested in selling themselves and what they could do rather than showing genuine interest in us. And so I think that's where Michael kind of stood out.
Yeah.
That team. So also the solution that Michael provided us, I know it's going against everything that everyone has said, but it was actually more cost efficient.
Okay.
So it was significantly cheaper that we noticed it. And because Michael had bothered to break it down, we could see where that time was being spent and what was actually happening. Yeah. And so, it was more cost efficient. And for a business of our size, we're not really focused on software development. We're consultants. So that cost efficiency was really important to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because we don't really have much experience in this space, we did get some feedback from some of Michael's previous clients, and mm-hmm. all of them were glowing. So they were all really positive and encouraging. So based on our vibe and, how Michael responded to us in Teams and subsequent communication and the feedback from his previous clients, we decided to go with SoftPositive.
Excellent. What a great story.
Yeah.
So prior to the 24th of February, what stood out for you in the way Michael's team, worked? Because you've been working on this a little while now. Was there anything that really stood out in how they interacted with you in doing the actual job?
Yes. They were just so efficient, which I wasn't used to. And they were very low maintenance, which I wasn't used to. So there was no HR issues, and I'm not sure if that's a cultural thing or whether Michael shielded us from that. But whatever it was, there was no HR issues. They were so efficient. They showed clear understanding of our project. And Michael himself, he was and is amazing. I really had no idea about what I was doing in terms of software development. This is a side project for us.
Yeah.
So I can kind of do other things, but software development is not my thing. And so, the lingo, the tools, any part of it, we just had no idea. I remember sitting in a meeting once, and I think they said something about Panda. I was like, what the hell's Panda? So I had to Google it. So there's so many things I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Trello, Jira. We'd never used any of these tools before, and it's just like basic software development stuff.
Yeah.
And to his credit, he's never made me feel like I was asking stupid questions, even though I'm sure there were plenty.
Yeah. Yes.
I won't get him to elaborate on that, I don't think. And you know, his leadership and the way he ran the team was really different from what I had previously experienced.
Yeah.
I remember with our previous developers, there was one time I asked for what I thought was like a really simple update, and I asked for a time frame, and they said 20 days. And I was like, 20 days? How could it? Very naive. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. I was like, how could this possibly take 20 days? You can imagine what you can get done in 20 days.
Yeah.
I didn't have the knowledge, and I think Michael knows this. I didn't have the knowledge or the skill to push back, to ask, is this appropriate? Is there another way of doing it? And so I just felt like I was stumbling around in the dark, and I just really wasn't equipped to manage the team. But there was no one else to do that for me. So I've never felt like that with SoftPositive and with Michael at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Michael helping me with the management, as helping me doing everything,
Yeah.
and how efficient the team are behind him, there was so much progress in this software that we just really hadn't seen before, and it was really exciting for me, and it was really good. You know, I felt really proud that we could demonstrate to our Resonate team that we're committed to innovation and doing things better, because we had the right team behind us to deliver our projects, and we could actually see tangible outcomes finally that we could use every day in our business. You know, we talk about innovation all the time.
Yeah.
And it was just really nice to be able to deliver something finally, because Michael and the team were there. So they were just amazing.
Well, I mean, that's a really, positive endorsement, not just of their skill and so on, but obviously that attitudinal element that comes often with the cultural aspects. I guess, Deb, things changed, as we all know. How would you describe how the team at SoftPositive continued to work with you on the projects, since the invasion?
I know Michael said thank you to his clients for putting up with them, but there was nothing to put up with. There was I didn't notice anything. There's been no change whatsoever. And if you weren't following the news, if you weren't up to date, you would have no idea what they were going through. I mean, we don't know what they're going through. We wouldn't know what was happening on the ground. Yeah. I don't know if you've experienced that, Trevor, but there was just...
No, I don't think any of us have experienced
what they
had go through.
Yeah, they just have had no complaints. They've just continued to deliver. Their work ethic is unbelievable, and it hasn't wavered. We definitely go on more breaks than they do. Like, they just don't take breaks. They don't stop work. I think Michael even mentioned we were taking Christmas break, and our industry shuts down for 2 weeks. And he was like, oh, we're taking a break. And I was like, oh, yeah, we're taking a break too. I was like, we're shutting down for 2 weeks. And he was like, oh, that's a long time. I mean, that was pre-invasion, but it's the same now. And even when we message to check in on the team on how they're going, there's no complaints. They just, all they would say is, thank you for checking in, and everything is fine. And I just can't comprehend I just can't comprehend that. So, they've continued to work so hard, and I have so much, and everyone at Resonate has so much respect for them, and really puts into perspective what we go through here. Yeah. And, just going back to your question, they were unbelievable before, and I think even more so now in context of their situation. Yeah.
Well, that's a really wonderful insight, Deb, and thank you very much for sharing that. It's just great to get that sort of understanding from someone that's actually working a project with them. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Michael. It's
Thank you a lot for such kind feedback. I really appreciate it. And I want to add maybe one little thought. It's not only about me being dedicated to this project and to building up projects for you. It's also about the whole team, and we always encourage our team members and clients to have direct communications between the team, and that knows that all of our team members on a daily basis communicate with Resonate team, and it's all about the team, mostly about the team and their dedication to their jobs.
That's great, Michael. We can see that there's a very strong connection between you two, so that's really wonderful. I wanted to now just change things up a little bit, and by introducing everyone to Jordan Miller. He's the managing director of CheckRight, as I mentioned previously. Now, Jordan, you're a successful entrepreneur. You've come from an IT background. Now evolved CheckRight into a scaling business. And, you know, we understand that you've got quite a number of Ukrainian developments within your own team. So can you share with us, like, how long have you been working with Ukrainian developers? And was there a reason why you chose to work with them specifically?
Yeah, so look, well, first of all, just let me say it's just such a great privilege to be part of this thing happening today and be able to support both our friends in Ukraine, but then also just to explain to others that it actually is incredibly easy and workable and profitable to be working with Ukrainians. So I think a little bit. I think my background is I've sort of worked all over the world. I was the chief information officer for Zurich Insurance for Japan and Korea. I looked after IT for for AXA Insurance for Japan, for the UK, for Asia Pacific, and then I ran innovation for AXA globally, based out of Paris. So I've had the fortune to be able to work with IT teams all over the world. And when it came time, when I retired and I decided to start my own company, and then it came time to start looking for developers of my own. And certainly, I think immediately I went straight to Eastern Europe. And at the time, I was still living in Paris at the time. So that was sort of convenient for me. But then when I moved to Australia, I stayed with my Eastern European developers. And I sort of flitted a little bit around Eastern Europe a little bit in terms of where my development staff were coming from. But about 5 years ago, I settled on Ukraine, and we've started just almost exclusively hiring from Ukraine during that, over the last 5 years. And it was just because I think everyone's mentioned a lot of the things already, but I think a lot of it does stem into cultural differences and certainly education. I think the focus on STEM, so science, technology, engineering, maths, the focus on STEM in Ukraine is very, very high. And so it is, and I know sort of Deb said it was cheaper. Look, there are absolutely, if you're looking at a per hour basis, an hourly rate, you can absolutely find cheaper developers around the world. I think no one's going to disagree with that. But I think when you compare hourly rates to productivity, I don't think you'll find anywhere more cost effective than Ukraine. And so even if the hourly rate isn't the cheapest in the world, the productivity is so much higher that it ultimately works out to be a very cost effective way of a location to develop in. And that's when you weigh up cost and quality, it doesn't matter that they're not the cheapest in the world, because they're certainly some of the best in the world that I've ever worked with.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really interesting perception, because often we do look at things at straight out hourly rates. Oh no, that's too expensive. But that's really important to understand, I guess, the efficiency and effectiveness of how they work. I guess in the beginning it must have had an impact on things, but how are things going now for you, and how are your team in Ukraine working with you here in Australia?
Yeah, well, look, I think one of the other reasons we chose Ukraine as well, and is because of the time zone, and we actually use time zone in our favor. So, right now it's, what does my clock say? 27 minutes past 9 in the morning in Ukraine. So, it's 4:30 in the afternoon here. So we get that nice little overlap. But what it means for us is that we do a full work day here in Australia, working after our Australian New Zealand customers, and then at night, overnight. And as far as our customers are concerned, pretty much miraculously, the next day, all this stuff is delivered, right?
Yeah,
They go to work, and the next day, all this stuff is delivered. It's fantastic, and it's great. And time zone is really working in our favors for that. And so, because of that, I think when the invasion happened, it certainly, yes, it was a little bit disruptive, obviously and we're about 80% Ukrainian, so we've still about 20% elsewhere, but and that's just historical, but we're about 80% from Ukraine, and I think that yes, it certainly had an impact on us, but our customers, and we are very strong advocates of transparency in every way, and certainly when it came to our customers, we were transparent with them. We said, look, the reason why we've been able to deliver the quality we have, while the throughput that we are able to deliver, is because we're using high quality resources out of Ukraine. As you would know, Ukraine is in a world of trouble right now. And so there will be some interruption. We will do everything we can to minimize it, but there will be some interruption in the normal speed that we deliver things. And I think the credit for all of my staff is that disruption was quite minimal. We probably dropped down. I think in the first couple of weeks we were down about sort of 20% of our normal capacity. But then we were sort of, after that we jumped back up to 50%, and even now we're sort of about 80-90%.
Wow.
It's just, and despite the fact that the war is still going on, there is still, I'm still talking to my staff, and they're getting, and missiles are hitting, rockets are hitting buildings around in the area, because a lot of my staff are in Kiev, and it's still happening, and yet it's just incredible to see the resilience of the Ukrainian people in just dedication to their jobs, and their dedication to what they've agreed to do.
Yeah, well, that was actually going to be one of my next questions to you, Jordan, is like, obviously, we've heard from Vladimir and Michael about the skills, but you obviously had a pretty long-term insight into the characteristics. Like, how would you describe those?
I could wholeheartedly agree with Michael about the perfectionism, but that's okay, because that's what I'm like. And I care as much about how code is looking on the inside as I do about how it is on the outside.
Yeah.
And for me, I still review a lot of the. I haven't written code for many years, but I still review a lot of the code that we write, purely because if I can't understand it, then it needs to be done again. Because even though I'm not supposed to be writing it, but I just want, I see what the changes they're making, and I see that developers are going back in and rewriting sections that weren't as clear as they should have been the first time, and so they do things like that, which for me, I know for some people that would be really annoying, but for me that's actually exactly what I want, because we were always trying to make our platform better, and we were trying to make the quality higher, and so having that perfectionism for me is an absolute bonus, because I it's that I know a lot of places that I've worked with in the past, it's near enough is good enough, and look, it appears to be working, that's it, and that's certainly not what you get out of Ukraine, and which suits me. And I don't think I'm not sure whether entirely that comes back to a cultural thing again. I think it does. I think it does come back to the way, the culture of Ukraine, and how they've been how they've been raised and how they've been taught, and having that sort of perfectionism, and to a certain and a lot of transparency as well. I think that one of the big differences for me, because we are quite technical, and unlike Deb, I do get into the weeds a lot with my guys, but it's not unusual for someone on my team to say, hey, I stuffed up, this bug, I caused this bug that happens to be in production. Here's where I went wrong, and here's how we've learned. Here's how we can make sure that no one else. And I just think that's such a refreshing attitude, as opposed to in other places.
A business owner's dream, isn't it, to have a team like that put their hand up. Say, I got it wrong, but I'm going to fix it.
I've got it wrong. I've got to fix it. And everybody, here's why I got it wrong. And let's all not make the same mistake again. And I think that's a really amazing attitude that comes out of Ukraine that I don't see elsewhere in the world. Whereas a lot of other places that I've worked with, there's a tendency to try and hide mistakes. Quick, let's not let the client find out that we've made that there's a bug here. And while that may on the surface appear to be the right thing, it ultimately leads to less quality in software, and it doesn't let everybody learn from the mistakes. And Ukrainians, certainly the ones that I've worked with, and I don't work with an agency, I work with a lot of individuals. So I only hire individuals. I don't hire agencies generally. And so because I manage them myself, because I have the skills to do that. But and so this attitude is not coming from one agency. This attitude is coming from all these different people who are unrelated to each other, who just happen to be from Ukraine.
And the infrastructure over there, Michael spoke about, it's still working well and all that sort of stuff. I think you had an amazing story of one of your workers that you might share.
Yeah, well, so I think one of my quality assurance people, she was she'd committed to me that she was going to have some things tested, and then at the end of the day, or the next day actually, she wrote back to me and said, "Look, I'm sorry I didn't get that done. We lost all Wi-Fi in the bomb shelter," and it's just like incredible. It's like, it's okay, you don't have to apologize for that. That's not something that we roll with all these punches but I think while certainly when you look at the news and you see all the devastation, and my staff have sent me photos, and it's awful, it's absolutely awful, but just on the Ukrainian infrastructure, their mobile networks must be incredible, because we have never really lost communication, even when they were because many of my staff evacuated, and we were still I really insisted that they stay in contact the whole time, because I did want to know, not from a work perspective, but from a personal perspective.
You would be very concerned.
Yeah, and so we were always able to have contact, even as they were evacuating, as they were moving to, some of them moved to Lviv, and then now they've come back to Kiev again. But I think from that perspective, I think the infrastructure is it's obviously good enough that they can have a major war happen, and still for the majority of people, and certainly the people I interact with, we never lost any communication.
That's brilliant, Jordan. Thank you like heaps for coming on here today. I think it is very much about food for thought for Aussie tech companies to consider, maybe how, if they've got needs or resources that they're finding very difficult, to look at, potentially topping up. And that's one of the things that Michael's company and other Ukrainian software companies can do, is, just fill some gaps. This is not, necessarily about us saying, well, let's shift all our work offshore. The demands for developers here in Australia is incredibly high, and almost everyone I speak to is saying that there is a real shortage. So I hope what we're learning today is that there are opportunities to at least reach out and see whether there are some gaps that can be filled. And I think your point, Jordan, about the 24/7 side of things is a really interesting strategy.
That's maybe my local team by going, by basically being able to work 16-hour days. That's how we work 16-hour days. Half of that in Ukraine, half of that in Australia.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Jordan. Great to hear your version and perspective of working with the Ukrainian people. Finally, I would like to introduce a very special guest in Trudy Mitchell from the UNHCR to provide us with a bit of an insight to both how important even your donations to come along and join us here today, but also to explain the very real usage of these funds and how it is helping people on the ground in Ukraine. Hello, Trudy. Welcome.
Hi, Trevor.
Look, we know Australians are great supporters of charities, but often wonder where their donations go. I was wondering if you could share with everyone here today the situation in Ukraine and what specifically UNHCR is focusing on in delivering that much needed aid.
Thanks, Trevor. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. And I also just wanted to acknowledge Marcus van Voot, who I think gave the introduction to Australia for UNHCR. He's been an amazing supporter for a long time. So I guess the situation in Ukraine, so UNHCR, for UNHCR, it's one of the largest, it is the largest human displacement crisis in the world today. And I'm really listening to Vladimir and Michael. It is really uplifting to hear just how resourceful and optimistic things are, and it's great to hear about the work that's happening in the development side of things, which is really important. UNHCR's role is as a humanitarian organisation providing emergency aid and protection to people who have been forced to flee the country, who have become refugees, or for people who have been internally displaced. And as Vladimir said earlier, UNHCR's numbers are around 6 million refugees have travelled to neighbouring countries since the beginning of this conflict at the end of February. And there is about 1 million people who have gone back to Ukraine in that time as well. So it's quite a fluid situation. We're estimating that there's 8 million people who are internally displaced, and that is that they've had to flee their home, but they're within Ukraine. And then there's a further 13 million people who are stranded in affected areas and where there's heightened security risks and it's difficult to get out. So, they're very big numbers. And I guess there's a bit of context about the UN Refugee Agency and our presence in Ukraine. UNHCR has been in Ukraine for 3 decades. Following the breakup of the Soviet Union. We were particularly involved since 2014, though, with the annexation of Crimea. The conflict has meant that UNHCR has really had to scale up its support in Ukraine as well as in neighbouring countries in very challenging circumstances. UNHCR is staying and delivering on the ground to those who desperately need it, the people who are most vulnerable, and mostly that is women and children, elderly, disabled people, and unaccompanied children. And many of our colleagues in Ukraine who work for UNHCR, who are Ukraine nationals, they're experiencing what Michael has been talking about. They've been displaced themselves from their homes. So what are the key things that we're doing at the moment in this emergency situation? So we're establishing and operating reception centres to provide safety for those forced to flee. We're distributing core relief items, and these are the basics, but really needed: blankets, food, infant formula, construction materials. So for houses that are bombed, if we can help get them back to being habitable, solar lamps, hygiene kits, those sort of things. Another important area is providing cash assistance to help people who just to be able to buy the basics, basically. And then protecting the most vulnerable, such as unaccompanied children and women at risk of gender-based violence. So access to the hardest hit areas remains extremely challenging, and we're seeing it on the news bulletins around ongoing conflict. And so that's a challenge for our team. And as we've heard, 90% of refugees are women or children, and, you know, can be vulnerable. And one of the projects that I've spoken about with Trevor is the Blue Dots project. UNHCR and partners have established 31 safe spaces, and we call them Blue Dots. And they're in Bulgaria, Hungary, Italy, Moldova, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. And they're an integral part to the protection response, providing emergency services for the most vulnerable. In Poland, for instance, a total of 7,641 people have been counselled through the Blue Dots as up to the 16th of May, so a few days ago. Protection teams have provided 4,161 interventions and over 1,500 referrals. And so when I'm talking about, most people are inquiring about health and medical services, transport, financial support, and cash assistance. And most interventions include provision of information, mental health, and psychosocial support. As you can imagine, there's quite a lot of trauma. And these spaces are also important because from a child protection perspective, providing children's play spaces and psychosocial support for children as well. So there's some of the things that we're doing, and we're trying to put more of these Blue Dot sort of situations in place in key areas.
Excellent. That's really awesome, Trudy. I'm going to share a screen where we've got a QR code where you can hold your phones up and take this, and it will direct you to, you know, where you can donate further. But while we've got that on screen, Trudy, I was just wondering if you could maybe share a little bit of, you know, how else can people help apart from the $20 that, you know, has been raised from each ticket today?
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for the $20 from your ticket. It all really helps. And, you know, the Australian community has certainly gotten behind the Ukraine situation. The donation, you can go to our website and find out more information. And we've also got our World Refugee Day lunch that's coming up that you could attend in person or virtually. So, and that's on our website as well. So, yeah, and if you want to find out further information, I'm very happy to be in touch.
Excellent. And I think the other thing there is with this event, we have purposely recorded this. We will be posting it on our website. We will email a link to all of you, and, you know, we would simply ask you know, to share that with friends and colleagues, and yeah, really just it doesn't end here. We can continue to do things. Obviously the connection has been a bit around, you know, today on the software development and creating trade, but certainly I know that Trudy and her team, of which there are a few others here, Kirsty and Zoe, I'm aware of, you know, to keep you know, coming up with ideas of how we can help. So Trudy, thank you very much for coming along and sharing that with us. I think that pretty much concludes our event today. I really do hope it's been informative for everyone and given us, you know, insights that we may not have had, you know, that we see on the news and all that sort of thing. But I think we can certainly take a few things out, even from Volodymyr and Michael, and Deb and Jordan for their time to educate us about how it is, you know, a real beneficial thing to keep working with the people in Ukraine. But before we actually end, there's just a couple of people I really want to thank. A few special mentions. Firstly, to Kirsty and Nicole from Super Dream Marketing and PR, who did an amazing job, all in their own time, to get some press releases out, which actually were published in about 6 or a dozen national newspapers and online. And what they did, you know, was just fantastic. So a big thank to them. To my team, particularly Jasmine, who put in a lot of work spreading this around on LinkedIn and all sorts of other mediums, and developing and pushing it out and reminding people to book in and so on. And of course, Marcus, who helped with the connection to UNHCR, Steve and Graham, all being terrific support. And of course, to all of you, you know, these things don't happen just by chance. We thank you for attending. We hope that you've been able to get some, you know, really inspirational energy. And I know I've been touched by, I guess, the resolution of the Ukrainian people, but also what came through so strongly from Vladimir and Michael is just the positive attitude given their particular situation right now. So thank you all so much for being here, and please, we'll get this out to everyone and keep sharing it around. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for purchasing your tickets. Bye for now.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, Trevor.